SHROUD is part of a bigger project. So back in 2021, I lost both my parents, and grief and death entered my life in quite a big manner. And that kind of triggered me off to an artistic research, a 4-year artistic research that mapped out a series of different performances and projects that each explore grief and death in different ways, in different aspects. The first chapter began in 2021 and it was called My Undying Love, and that work explored themes of the rituals we do to say goodbye to loved ones. And that work was an immersive performance for 5 people at a time, in which I shared the story of the loss of my mum and the last hour I spent with her as she was passing away. I then placed myself into the position of a dying person, laying in a hospital bed, and the audience would enter and become visitors that would sit around me in that moment for 1 hour's time. In contrast to that, chapter 2 was titled Carcass. It's a very different type of work. It's a big stage work on 6 dancers. And in that work, I was exploring themes of what happens when you bring really difficult questions about living and dying to groups in a kind of social situation. What happens when you question, what does survival mean? What does living actually mean? How do you expect your death to be? How do you expect death of others to be? Have you ever seen death? What happens when we really actually talk about this in a kind of public setting? That performance framed that universe. Chapter 3 brings us way forward into the now and is a much more obscure and dreamlike work because it explores the hidden layers of grief that exist within people the many years after they've experienced loss. Because in life, we get up and we continue and we go on. But grief exists within us always. But where does it exist? For me, it exists in my dreams. When I close my eyes and I sleep, very often this is where I experience grief. So SHROUD is very much about this universe. The whole research will be rounded off with one final project, which is called Death is Not the End, which will be a community project where I will be working with 6 non-performers who each have experienced different experiences of grief in their life, and we will be uniting to create an installation together where their testimonies will be echoed out into a site-specific venue, and we will be looking at the power of healing through sharing collectively.